She survived her cruel stepfamily and endless chores. But can Cinderella survive 73 shades of blue gowns, a 40-degree wrist wave movement, and dining table so long she needs to shout at her own husband? Turns out the glass slipper was the easy part. Let's see what happens after Happily Ever After. Cinderella woke in the grand royal bedroom for the 100th morning, still marveling at the silk sheets above her head. The prince had already left for his duties. She rang the small bell on her bedside table, hoping for a simple breakfast. Within seconds, 3 servants burst through the door. They began arguing loudly. "Your Highness, I insist I butter the bread," the first servant declared. "No, I'm the royal bread butterer," the second one protested. "That position doesn't even exist," the third shouted. Cinderella raised her hand weakly. "I can butter my own bread, really?" All 3 servants gasped in horror. "A princess does not butter her own bread," they said in unison. Cinderella sighed and sank back into her pillows, already exhausted. Lady Prudence stood before Cinderella like a stern general, her back impossibly straight. "A princess does not laugh with her mouth open," Lady Prudence barked. Cinderella tried to suppress her smile. "But the joke was funny. A princess does not slouch. Your posture should be as straight as a broomstick." Cinderella muttered under her breath, "I know broomsticks very well." Lady Prudence's sharp ears caught it. "What was that?" "Nothing," Cinderella said quickly, straightening her back. Lady Prudence circled her like a hawk. "And another thing, when you wave to the people, your wrist rotation must be exactly 40 degrees. Not 39, not 41, 40. Cinderella blinked. "How do I measure that?" "You feel it," Lady Prudence snapped. Cinderella opened the doors to her wardrobe and stared in disbelief at the 73 elaborate gowns hanging before her. Her lady's maid Beatrice appeared at her elbow. "Which gown for today's royal luncheon, Your Highness?" The blue one," Cinderella suggested. Beatrice's eyes widened. "Which blue? Morning sky blue, sapphire blue, robin's egg blue, melancholy blue, slightly sad but trying to stay positive blue?" Cinderella stared at her. They're all just blue." Beatrice gasped. "Your Highness, I just want something comfortable," Cinderella said desperately. Beatrice clutched her chest as if Cinderella had struck her. "Comfortable? Your Highness, we do not use such vulgar language in the palace." 20 minutes later, Cinderella wore 7 layers of fabric and could barely turn her head. The dining table stretched 40 feet from end to end. The prince sat at one end and Cinderella at the other. The prince cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "How was your day, my love?" Cinderella leaned forward. "What?" "I said, how was your—" "We do not shout at the dining table," the Queen Mother interrupted sharply. The prince and Cinderella fell silent. The servant placed a bowl of soup in front of Cinderella. She looked down at the 12 forks surrounding her plate and panic set in. Another servant leaned forward and whispered, "Start from the outside, Your Highness." Cinderella nodded gratefully and picked up the outermost fork. She dipped it into her soup. The Queen Mother's spoon clattered to her plate. "She's using the dessert fork for soup!" The Queen Mother fainted dramatically. Servants rushed from all directions. The prince just smiled weakly at Cinderella and mouthed, "It's okay." She did not feel okay. Cinderella sat frozen on an uncomfortable chair, trying not to move a single muscle. She had been sitting for 6 hours while the royal artist painted her portrait. The artist stepped back, squinting at his canvas. "Chin up? No, not that much. Less? More? No, you've gone too far." Cinderella's nose began to itch. A terrible, unbearable itch right on the tip. She glanced at the artist. His back was turned. Slowly, she began to raise her hand. The artist whirled around. "Your Highness, your hand has moved." I just have an itch." "A princess does not scratch," he declared, positioning her hand back on her lap. Cinderella sat there, the itch tormenting her, wondering if this was what the rest of her life would be like. Cinderella stood on the ceremonial platform waving to the crowd below. Her hand moved mechanically 40 degrees, just as Lady Prudence taught her. A young servant girl approached her nervously. "Your Highness, you've been waving for 3 hours. Would you like some water?" "Can I stop waving to drink it?" Cinderella asked hopefully. The servant looked horrified. "Oh no, Your Highness, you must wave with one hand and drink with the other." Cinderella looked down at the crowd. A little girl skipped past, laughing and chasing a butterfly completely free. Cinderella felt a sharp pang of envy. The ballroom glittered, but Cinderella's smile felt heavy. This was the 3rd ball this week, and her feet ached in her silk slippers. She glanced at the entrance for the 10th time. Prince Charming was late, held up by an emergency meeting with the royal council about a trade dispute with the neighboring kingdom. A duchess cornered her by the refreshment table. And then my cat, Mr. Whiskers, he's a tabby, not a calico, he knocked over the vase. And I said to him, "Mr. Whiskers, that was my grandmother's vase. And do you know what he did?" Cinderella forced a smile. "What did he do?" "He just looked at me. Can you imagine?" "Incredible," Cinderella said flatly. The Duchess continued, "Now, my other cat, Lady Fluffington." Cinderella's eyes glazed over. She had stopped listening after cat number 4. Cinderella pulled her hooded cloak tight as she slipped through the palace museum. In the center of the main hall, her famous glass slippers sat under glass. A group of tourists crowded around. "They say the slipper fit her perfectly," one woman exclaimed. A man shook his head. "I heard she's actually a secret giant and the fairy godmother shrunk her feet with magic." A child tugged his mother's sleeve. "I think the prince just made her up. She's probably not even real." Cinderella pulled her hood lower and hurried away, feeling like a ghost in her own story. Late at night, Cinderella crept down to the palace kitchen. She found a pile of dirty dishes and without thinking plunged her hands into the warm water. The head cook entered and nearly dropped his tray. "Your Highness, what are you doing?" Cinderella looked up, her hands covered in soap suds. I miss it. Is that weird?" The cook's stern expression softened. "Not weird, dear, just unusual for royalty." "I miss feeling useful," Cinderella said quietly. "Here I'm just an ornament." The cook studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Finish those 3 plates, then off to bed with you." Cinderella smiled, her first smile in days, and scrubbed. The prince found Cinderella standing alone on the balcony, staring at the village lights below. "You miss your old life, don't you?" he asked gently. Cinderella turned to him, tears in her eyes. "Not the abuse, but I miss doing things myself. I miss being useful. Here I just exist ornamentally." The prince was quiet for a moment and then took her hand. "What if we changed that?" "Changed what?" Cinderella asked. "Your role," the prince said. "What if being princess meant more than just looking pretty and waving?" Cinderella's eyes lit up. "What do you mean?" Cinderella knelt down as children surrounded her, tugging at her simple day dress. A little girl with tangled hair looked up at her shyly. "Are you really a princess?" "I am," Cinderella said, smiling warmly. "But you're not wearing a crown," the girl pointed out. Cinderella laughed. "Crowns are heavy and uncomfortable. I much prefer being down here with all of you." The orphanage director approached, wringing her hands. "Your Highness, we are so honored by your visit. The children have never—" "Please," Cinderella interrupted gently. "Just call me Cinderella, and I'd like to come every week if that's okay." The director's eyes filled with tears. "You would do that?" "Of course," Cinderella said. "These children need to know someone cares." Cinderella and the prince sat across each other at a normal-sized table, close enough to actually talk. The prince pushed a plate of badly burnt potatoes towards her. "I tried to cook." Cinderella looked at the blackened lumps and laughed. "You tried very hard, I see." "Are they terrible?" the prince asked. "Absolutely awful," Cinderella said, taking a bite away. "But I love that you tried." The prince grinned. My mother nearly had a heart attack when she found out I was in the kitchen. Lady Prudence fainted when I laughed too loud today, Cinderella added. They both burst out laughing. This isn't a fairy tale I imagined, Cinderella said softly, but it's real and it's ours. The prince reached across the table and took her hand, and that's better than any fairy tale. Moral: the fairy tale doesn't end with a wedding. It begins when you find your purpose.